And welcome everyone who's watching live and watching online. So excited to bring you part 4 of this webinar series. We've been halfway, maybe a quarter of the way around the world, and now we're going to get all the way halfway around the world with a session on South Asia. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our panelists. We have ANKUR Malhotra. Malhotra? You have to tell
Hi.
me. And joining us from the US. And I'll just read a little bit of your bio to give folks an idea of your background. You're an Emmy-nominated entrepreneur, engineer, and musicologist. MBA from Wisconsin School of Business, co-founder of Amarrass Records, and the Madison Music Review. You're a DJ host, advisor to the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, and you work with the revival of folk music and vinyl culture in India, and you've been featured in the New York Times, NPR, BBC. There's lots of Rolling Stone India and many more. Welcome, ANKUR. We also have Umair Jaffar, who is on top of being a illustrious board member of folk music, treasured board member of Folk Music Ontario. Umair is the executive director of Small World Music, and you were the CEO and artistic director for IPAC, which is the Institute for the Preservation of Arts and Culture, which is a Pakistan-based nonprofit social enterprise. You serve on the board for several other nonprofit organizations, including Capicoa, North York Arts, and Music Connect Asia, MBA from University of Adelaide, Australia, and an Masters of Science in Cultural Anthropology from the University of Oxford. This keeps going. What a don't you love it getting your bio read to you? Artists have to go through this all the time, okay? But quite illustrious guests. We're so excited to have the chance to speak with you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rosalyn, for that warm and lengthy artist introduction. But yes, it's indeed a pleasure to be here. And thank you, all you folks tuning in from wherever you are. I'm guessing most are in Canada. So greetings.
So I wanted to start by getting an idea of the regions that you each have some experience working in South Asia. Can you describe a little bit about the work that you've done over there and which areas you're kind of connected to?
Sure. And yeah, maybe I'll start. And so I'm co-founder of a small record label called Amarrass Records, and we're not just a record label. We've founded ourselves in 2009, me and longtime friend Ashutosh Sharma, based in New Delhi, India, which is where I was born and brought up in. And over the past 14 years or so, what we've been doing is, other than coming out with music, which we've been recording in the field, we've been involved in creating artist identities, specifically of folk musicians, traditional musicians, developing those artist identities in the form of, promo, marketing, album work, artist management, things like that. But also, I think what was really important early on was to create a platform, which we called Amarrass Festival. And then the subsequent iterations have been monthly events called Amarrass Nights, where we've been showcasing artists like the ones we've been working with, but also new emerging talent within India, but also artists traveling through India or on their journeys through. So creating this platform where we could showcase artists, but also create cultural collaborations. So in a nutshell, that's what we've been doing over the past decade. And of course, touring a lot extensively in Europe. We've also done performances at Winnipeg Folk Festival, at Harbourfront Center, most recently at the Aga Khan Museum last year. So we've been touring. But yeah, that's me and the work in India. So, and it's mostly Delhi-based is where our operations are, but we've also done orchestrated shows in other cities, what we call the B towns. So maybe it's like not the top level like Toronto, Vancouver, but some of the smaller London size kind of cities, London, Ontario, where Bangalore, Jaipur, Pune, for example. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Umair?
And yeah, I can jump in. Can you hear the audio all right? I apologize to everyone. I'm in a very noisy setting, so let me know if I need to repeat anything. So this is India meets Pakistan on this panel, hey, and which usually doesn't happen. So I'm representing the other side of the border in today's session. My experience has been with IPAC that you mentioned, Ross, and IPAC has essentially been an organization that was a presenter, but also a research and a documentation organization recording folk and indigenous culture. So very similar to the work ANKUR is doing on the other side of the water and with almost the same communities, because history divided our continent into weird pieces, and a lot of communities got split up and culture was lost. So over the years, my involvement has been primarily in Pakistan and all across the country, with the 4 major cities running festivals and concert series there, and also running artist residencies, which are documentation projects for different folk traditions, which brought in musicians from abroad to work with local artists, etc. Outside of that, I've worked a bit in Afghanistan in the region, and a bit in Central Asia beyond that as well, in Uzbekistan, and a bit in the Middle East, primarily in the UAE, and trying to build regional connections and figuring out what to do, which is the other hat I wear, the collective called Music Connect Asia, trying to connect touring and routing within Asia and trying to cross borders, which are usually difficult, like the India-Pakistan relationship. So hopefully that's some context that will help shape the conversation.
That's great. Those are a lot of places, Umair. My next question would be, what would I don't even know if there is like a typical tour, but maybe you could describe ways that artists have been able to access those regions performance wise, and I'll clarify that, like, so like an example would be, would somebody typically, if I wanted to perform in India, would I set up like an anchor date with a festival and then be able to add dates, or is that more of like a festival circuit that you can play multiple things at once? What does the kind of touring scene look like for international artists in the region?
Yeah, and it's a very loaded question, because I remember when we started the business, and I think part of the impetus behind why we started Amarrass was out of a sheer frustration with the lack of a scene, like just an organized network to begin with, right? And so there was that. So when we talk about a tour in the Western context, if I may use quotes there, it's like a band going on the road, and they're 5, 6, 7, whatever is the number, but a certain number of gigs over a very short defined period of time, which kind of makes it sustainable and from just a touring purpose and everything. And you're hitting some anchor dates, as you mentioned, and some smaller club shows, or doing some marketing promo stuff in the middle. But that's how a typical tour would be. India does not work that ways, unfortunately, and typically how a lot of international acts make it there are, first of all, it's the really big names who kind of get some attraction and everything, and of course today the scene is way different and has evolved. in a positive sense in the last 14 years. But it still requires a fair amount of government involvement in the sense. So you'd see a lot of bands coming through India, but they have some level of sponsorship from their government, and whether it's a travel sponsorship or something, but the travel sponsorship from the government entails that the band has to go and reach out and book, 3, 4, 5, X number of shows for them to avail the sponsorship money. So, and those are some of those mechanisms where we have operated with bands. We recently had a band from Israel, Radio Baghdad, perform at Amarrass Nights just last month. But then we had Guy Buttery from South Africa also perform in November. And we've done that with other international acts, and that's been one of the primary mechanisms. But we have also gone out and spent money which is not really recovered, in sense of hiring or bringing in acts like Jaffar or Bombino or Babazula. And in those instances, we were able to kind of add on 2 or 3 other shows in different cities or different venues to kind of just defray the cost of the booking and the travel costs and everything. So some of the different mechanisms.
This is a good question, Rosalyn. As Ankur, as you were asking, we both had a smile on our faces, because what we mean by tour in the South Asian or in the Pakistani context, Indian context, is so different from what we're used to here, which is why this conversation is exciting, because we can really tell you, like, it's a completely different world. It really is. Pakistan, unfortunately, is far further behind than where India is, in that the organized infrastructure is really non-existent. So there is no festival network that does a circuit. That doesn't mean festivals don't happen. We have a bunch of very good festivals that do happen. So it's not, the planning for something like this is different. So you wouldn't have an anchor date and find things around in that time frame. However, the opportunity is in a country like Pakistan, which is still very isolated versus India, to tourism and to international exposure, that creates a lot of demand for anything that's coming from outside of the world. Canadian folk music or anything will do extremely well. You don't need to be a big name. Anyone with people, a presenter says there's a band coming from Canada and they do not put a name, they will sell out a show because people are desperate for that. So that's a huge opportunity. The way it would work is, yes, you will need an anchor date. None of the presenters have budgets to fly you in. So you have to work with the Canadian Embassy, which has budgets. Luckily, we have funders like Canada Council who will fund your trip abroad. So your entry into Pakistan has to be through your embassy, what Ankur is sort of hinting as well. It has to be through the government channels. The Canadian Embassy is your friend there. They have consulates in the 3 major cities. They will be the first ones who will anchor and book your show. They will want to create, this is cultural diplomacy for them. So they will put a show at the embassy, at the consulate in Lahore, at the consulate in Karachi. So you've got your 3 shows just by talking to the embassy. And from the embassy, you connect to the presenters. Because there's no fixed festival circuit, there's no fixed seasons or performing arts centers, means that any date works. As soon as someone finds out you're coming, they will be like, we'll put a festival around your arrival, or we'll put a series around you. So you get quite a unique treatment and quite an exclusive treatment, because it's a market that is really desperate for exposure and connections. So that's a big plus. Over the years, there has been 1 or 2 anchor festivals that a lot of people are going to. They're still going through the embassy. The big one is in Islamabad, which is the capital. And through that, you connect to, it's a small country and it's a small community. So you can easily connect to the 5 presenters in the country. And outside of the embassy, you can get 2 or 3 gigs in each city very comfortably. I think another thing that we should talk about today is that we are next door to India. So how can you cross the border on foot from Lahore and enter India and then connect to the scene and things that ANKUR and others are doing in India as well? That has not been achieved successfully, unfortunately, because of the politics between the 2 countries. And the best player to do that is also your embassy. So if you can tell your embassy in Delhi and in Islamabad that we're coming, and you plan with both the embassies, then you can potentially get both India and Pakistan in one go. Afghanistan on the other side of the border is more tricky. So really, if you talk about South Asia, the big opportunities are India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Sri Lanka has, as we know, economic challenges. So from India heading into Bangladesh is possible, but these are huge countries, huge geographies. So it's not that you will just walk over and cross three countries. Like just doing Lahore and Delhi is very logistically possible because they're quite close to each other. But then if you're really ambitious and go all the way to Dhaka, then you're looking at a month at least. Hey, Ankur, like then really doing something like that is more ambitious. So my
Yeah,
recommendation is maybe just think one country at a time. Like if you're coming Pakistan, just think Pakistan, just think India,
I
Bangladesh. You can probably do.
I concur with Umair just because also in these days travel and the logistics of visas and everything is not easy or timely. So kind of keeping all of those things in mind, kind of just focusing, having a country focus. Also, like as Umair mentioned, like travel between India and Pakistan is not looked upon kindly by the immigration folks on either side of the border. So that will entail extra scrutiny and all of those things, which is not worth it. Uh, Again, with the India market, much more organized, and we have festivals at a certain time of the year. There's Magnetic Fields Festival, for example, in December every year. Now, maybe I think in its 10th year or something, but more focused on electronic. But they also have a folk showcase as well. There's Jodhpur International Folk Festival, but that again, but a bunch of these festivals would always have that embassy connect, and that makes a lot of sense for smaller international acts which are able to get this kind of council funding or something like that. Because how we would work then is with the local partners, say it's Canada Council or Danish Cultural Institute or whatever might be the case in Delhi. And we'll be their on-ground partners in the sense of they would connect us with the artists, or we are reaching out to them, asking them, okay, what's the roster of artists who have potentially got funding and are planning to tour. So we are kind of lining up dates and bringing subsequent or additional shows, or actually platforms, not just in Delhi, but in Bangalore and other cities. So kind of making it more into a touring kind of, sustainable thing, and adding that cultural tourism aspect to it, right? So some of these we would be like, okay, let's spend 2 days here, and we go spend time in the village and spend time with the folk musicians and do some interactions which might lead to subsequent projects and things like that, which is also what's really exciting. It's not just about running from A to B, it's about the engagement and the interactions as well.
That sounds amazing. That's yeah, very very neat to get to enrich that experience with those kinds of collaborations. Can we just do the word visas have been brought up a couple times now. Can we just look a little bit closer at what kind of visa requirements are in place if you want to enter and make some gig money as a Canadian?
So India is pretty easy, relatively speaking, in the sense of we don't have a specific, work permit needed or anything like that. It's just, you apply for a tourist visa, and these days, say, I'm just talking about, say, Chicago office, for example, in the States. I think within a month, so less than a month from application time to getting your passport with the visa in hand is typical. So, and they're pretty fast and kind of up to date with servicing and everything. And they think grant visas duration wise, it's a pretty lengthy period, but I think there's a maximum of 3 months or 6 months that you can stay in one stretch on that visa. So other than that, there are no restrictions really on the money you may or may not be able to receive. In the sense, the question comes up is more about tax deducted at source, which is pretty high in India. I think it's 15% in Canada versus maybe it's closer to 30% for international artists. And then claiming that back, you need a tax account and stuff like that. So that's one aspect of things which is not addressed by this whole visa side of things, but I'm also jumping the gun. But the visas is pretty straightforward, and of course, it always helps to have some invites and stuff like that. Okay, here's the purpose, here's what I'm going for, and they need financial proof and all of those things, bank statements and things like that. But other than that, not much of a hassle.
I'd say the same in Pakistan as well. There is no special work permit or visa that you need. You can come in on a tourist visa and do gigs and earn. The difference in Pakistan would be that if it's your first time going, I would highly recommend it to go through your embassy. That also sorts out through the Canadian embassy. That will also sort out your invitation and visa. It's very easy, it's not too expensive to get either. So it's not a huge hassle.
Oops. Thank you. So essentially, you're contacting the Canadian embassy in the country that you wish to visit, and then getting them to help with that process. And does Pakistan also have like a withholding tax or anything like that?
It does. There is no hard and fast rule. Depends on the presenter. Sometimes they give you in cash, and then it's completely like it's not even the tax loop. Sometimes if you're working through your embassy, you get paid through the Canadian system. So the Pakistani tax system is bypassed that way. And you get to deal with CRA, and you'll get paid by the Canadian government essentially. So it's a completely different series. However, if a presenter deducts your tax, reclaiming the tax is not an option. So that 13% you will lose, which is where you just negotiate knowing that that is the margin that you should keep for yourself.
Right. So Devin asked, oh, sorry.
So, and on that note, I'm also saying that it's also like, I guess, I would speak for Pakistan as well, because we're the same people. But there's some flexibility in how you could structure these financial arrangements, in the sense of, some embassies might be, okay, if you do the travel for these folks as well or whatever. So there are different ways of structuring how those transactions take place, so you could minimize costs. And I know I've done this with other presenters in Spain and Portugal as well, where you could, showing it as income, as performance income versus production cost, so as different ways you could like look at how you minimize. There's still taxes, but how do you minimize the tax to be paid out?
Great. And I know that this is a loaded and confusing question to ask, but also like what could an kind of independent international artist, assuming that this is their first time going over there, what could you expect in terms of fees? Or what's even like a benchmark to ask for if you're negotiating fees with, like, let's say a festival. And I know that that's a weird question, because we know that that's weird anywhere that you go, and there's a whole range. But if there was even like a bottom, entry point that you could think of.
Where you want to go first, or well, and yeah, it is a huge range, and all depends. And that's, I think that's the nature of this game, that again, with some of the anchor shows, you can expect a bigger fee, but then club gigs, for example, some of the clubs in Delhi have a capacity of 30 or 40 people, so that, even and when you start looking at what the ticket pricing could be or everything, it doesn't translate to, I would say, $300-400 Canadian, kind of equivalent. But where the trade-offs could be made is in the sense of you get sound for your show, you get marketing, you might get accommodation, food, so kind of working out. So that's where sometimes for up and coming or beginning artists, this could be really interesting in the sense of kind of doing a break-even tour. So some of these countries could also work as great kind of platforms to showcase and to interact with other musicians, to build a name, get some branding through other platforms. So, but at the top end, again, big artist names can get big numbers, right? So some of the festivals, for example, NH7 Weekender or something like that, they get 100,000 plus people over the weekend, and then they will have big names I'm blanking out on, but they're more like pop kind of stuff. So it's not like anyone necessarily from the folk scene, but I know Manu Chao was playing in Delhi this past weekend, but India has also got the G20 summit happening. And that's the other thing, I think, is to kind of look into, like, every country has something cultural wise, like 70 years of relationship or 75 years of this, or so kind of tying in with that. And then there are this series of cultural events that happen at various centers around the country and things like that. And for that, they need artists representing culture from their country. And, here, so those would be great examples.
Thank you.
This one is a hard one for Pakistan because, as I said earlier, we don't have that sort of a festival scene. There are no festivals where people would buy tickets and be at a festival. They're all kind of private festivals that are funded through embassies and sponsors and are invitation-based or free festivals. So the bad news is that I don't think you will make any money performing there from a festival. Where you're really making money is embassy and grants. When you talk to the Canadian embassy, you talk to your Canadian fees, $1,000, $2,000, whatever your performance fees is. The festival will most likely not have the budget, or will be looking at the embassy to fill that budget. So you, through your embassy, tell your fee, whatever you feel is your reasonable fee in Canada. You tell them that, instead of asking them for a number, because the number is, it's a generous number is 50,000 Pakistan rupees. And I was just doing the currency contrast for a whole band. And I just did the currency conversion, that's $242. So it's really, it's a different world and a different economics play there. However, when you're negotiating fees in a country like Pakistan, ANKUR and Hindi as well, there's a lot of things that are provided to you without even asking. You will be getting local hospitality end to end. Like, they won't pay for one meal on the show day. They will probably pay for the entire, if you're there for 3 weeks, you will get, a car and a driver and a guard and someone to show you around. So there's a lot of things which are part of local hospitality that we're not used to negotiating for, but those will be a given. If an international guest is coming, you will get a lot of that on top of it. One thing that I forgot to mention is, outside of the performance, ask for workshops, and then you get your workshop fees on top of it. So if you're looking at maximizing, even if you've got one gig in one city, ask for them to connect you to the local community. For instance, in the past, we've had folk musicians from Poland come, and we've done 1 week of workshops with Afghan refugee street children and creating music. So it depends on what you feel good in. That's how you increase your fee. So you don't, you pitch for a few activities in one city. You say, we'll do one show, but I want to do a master class. I want to do a workshop with children or workshop with local artists. And you charge your 500 to 1,000 or 1,500, whatever you would in Canada, you tell them the same amount. Let them worry about getting the money, because behind the scenes is the Canadian embassy paying or Canadian government paying. So don't even bother about negotiating with the festival, because that's going to be something completely obnoxiously low.
The Devin asked a question about if we can provide links to the most important conferences and showcases or festivals in the regions. Joel is pretty on top of finding links as we go, but we'll also send out yeah, if we miss any, and we'll do like a summary after and send out to everyone the recording with all the links of festivals and places that are mentioned. But maybe you can answer live just like what yeah, if there are kind of showcase type conferences or festivals there, and if not, if you can describe how to kind of get on people's radar and how to get the attention of an artistic director or somebody who's booking shows in the region.
I'll go first because my answer will be very different from Ankur's. There is none in Pakistan. No showcases, none of that, right? Like the concept is very different. So to get on someone's radar, you have to get on the embassy person's radar, which is not going to be an artistic person. There is no cultural attaché position in Pakistan for Canadian embassy. It's going to be a trade commissioner. Essentially, you're writing to a trade commissioner who's not an artistic director. You just tell them how you're excited, who you're interested, why, and pitch them a few videos. So that's how you're pitching yourself into the Pakistani market. You're going through the trade commissioner's route. However, I can list a few important festivals. The best one is, I'm going to drop the links in the chat here as well. The first one is Lok Virsa. That's the Pakistan National Folk Institute based in Islamabad. They have an annual 10-day festival. It's a National Folk Festival. It's an amazing opportunity to be connected to the folk music community in the entire country. They have, I think, 700 artists that come. They have artisans and crafts. It's a government institution. So that's a good anchor event. You go, and it's a prestigious name. So you go and perform at the National Folk Institute and National Folk Festival of the country. You tell the embassy that this is where we want to go. And I can, help make connections if there are any specific questions. But the embassy is the best one because they're on the ground right now. So that would be the first event I would recommend. The second event that I would recommend is also in Islamabad, which is the capital. It's called the FACE Mela, FACE, and I've dropped the link here as well. FACE stands for Foundation for Advancement of Cultural Education. And now they're doing an annual Mela/festival, a 3 days event in the capital as well. So these two are the good ones that happen in the fall. A third one does not have a website. It's called the Lahuti Melo. So I'm dropping their Instagram page for you. It's in the south of the country. I would say these are the three big names. If you want to, say that you've done your research and tell the embassy where you want to be, one of these three stages is a good one as your first anchor event. And then, as I said, everything else will work around your schedule because people are desperate to see you. So then you can connect to other presenters and they'll pull off a one-off show for you in another city or in the same city, etc. Outside of these three, there is one other institution which is called the Pakistan National Council for the Arts. I'm dropping the link here as well, PNCA. They don't do a festival, but they host one-off concerts. So if you're coming to Pakistan, not working with the three festivals, then PNCA could be your auditorium where you could do a show, and that could be your anchor event. So it's basically just that. Everyone else is private, smaller venues, but your target should be one of these four as your first anchor event. And then from there, you can do smaller gigs across the country.
And I've been also sending some festival names in the chat here. So India again has a more evolved, and bunch of these festivals have been going on for 10 plus years. I've already mentioned Jodhpur Riff Festival, which is in October around WOMEX time. And that's again features folk music artists from all over the world as well. And but normally three to four maybe international acts, but with the remaining acts being from the traditional indigenous communities in the region. There's Mahindra Blues Festival, which is a big festival, happens in Mumbai, but of course, as the name says, blues oriented. But that's brought in huge names like Buddy Guy and Shamika Copeland, and so big blues names. But if music is more bluesy oriented or something, that's interesting festival and open to. And then, that can be the anchor show, and then you can do club gigs around in Mumbai, Pune, and Pune is a couple of hours driving distance from Mumbai, so that kind of makes a smaller circuit. Goa is 2 hours again from Mumbai, so or 1 hour flight. So then there's Zero Festival of Music, which is in September in Arunachal Pradesh. I've never been there. It's just touring plans have always been in conflict, but we've showcased in what I might call just like the Amarrass stage, in sense of we have a platform there where we have presented artists like Dauda Jabarte from Denmark, a Gambian kora player. We've brought in Rehmat and Nusrat, a Sufi Qawwali band from the mountains in Uttarakhand in India. But we brought in who else? Madhu Siddiqui Diabate from Mali, another kora player. So we've but that's another great festival in a great setting. It's painful to get there in sense of it's close to the Chinese border, which is like it's a conflict zone where the region is claimed by China. So you need what's called inner line permits and stuff like that. So that's adding these additional layers. So once you have your visas and also then travel there, and it takes about 24 hours to get there with train, car, and flights, all of them involved. So, but all that said, that's a great festival. Also, like with just, there are 5,000 to 10,000 people there. So to have that kind of an audience, which is so engaged and with one of the most spectacular settings you could, it's all organic. So the stage is all made out of bamboo. The backdrop is, the tarai, the wheat fields, and you can see the mountains, the Himalayas as the backdrop. So that's the setting. But those are some of the spectacular, like Riff is Jodhpur is in a fort, one of UNESCO World Heritage Site. We do the monthly Amarrass nights in Delhi. That's Sundar Nursery. That's the first botanical garden set up in the 15th century. So it's also UNESCO World Heritage Site in the heart of Delhi. So that's, I think, one of the big add-ons, that the big pluses that doing concerts or doing performances in places like in various places in India can bring is that, wow, this setting or this experience is itself kind of adds a different layer to whether, how you're performing, the performance, but also what you get out of it, right? So I think that's something that's big. And then some of the other festivals, Magnetic Fields Festival is a great one. I've been there a couple of times. We presented Charanjit Singh 10 Ragas to a disco beat there. That's in December, again, more of an electronic tinge, but they also had Jaffar Kature performed there in this last year's edition. There's Sunburn, which is an electronic festival, happens in Goa. That's massive, 100,000 plus people. And then, in India, we have a lot of these, I wouldn't say small, but they're like more regional festivals, folk-oriented. Calcutta has Dover Lane Festival, which is a 2-week-long festival, amazing classical music. Jalandhar around Christmas time in Punjab, there's Harballa Festival, which is again another celebration of a lot of folk music from the northern part of India. So we have these, we also have art festivals. There's Kochi Biennial that took place. So that would have different music stages happening. So I think it's depending on the time and also the connect of the embassies, because often the embassies are involved, the cultural wings, and then figuring out the timing. Oh, if you plan your tour around this time, maybe we could have a platform at this festival, so that's how it kind of works its way out.
Is there a way for artists, if you do plan to perform there, how do you suggest that folks start kind of building up, start marketing or publicizing or start building up an audience in the region before actually traveling there, or is that possible?
Not for Pakistan.
Mm.
I think for Pakistan, the way you prepare is once you're there, you should have all your collateral ready. So when we say small, it's interesting when Ankur was showing our audience numbers. We are looking at India population of 1 billion and Pakistan also the sixth largest population in the world. So a lot of artists who have come to Pakistan have seen that their video or stream video on YouTube or stream numbers have gone up by 1,000%, because you're really, I don't know about India, but in Pakistan, we don't get a lot of artists from Canada, for instance, or folk artists. So when you go, doesn't matter who you are, you get this rock star treatment, and you have an influx of following. You get a lot of media that comes to you, so there's no way you can prepare for it. You have to rely on, again, your embassy and your local presenter. They will do that for you, because they also want to show off that they got a Canadian or they got an international artist. So what you need to prepare for is, once you get that attention, you have your stuff ready that you can just say, here's my YouTube channel, go and subscribe. So it will drive a lot of traffic on your social media, on your live stream platforms, on whatever you use. And I think that's how will you maximize your impact, which is where you will set stage for yourself to return to the country as well. And most likely what you'll be able to do in subsequent visits is, again, not go to the mainstream media, but go directly through your social media, because now you've got that channel going. That's a better strategy versus worrying about a PR agency, which does not exist for music, etc. So it's a country which does not have an organized music scene. So it's a very different scenario. India still, as you can tell, like, it's still more organized and more structured in certain ways. So Ankur will tell you what to do there, but the same strategy won't apply in Pakistan for sure.
Yeah, and in India, again, I think, going through, as Umair pointed out, going through your local presenters makes a lot of sense, because in our case, for example, with Amarrass, we connect, we've already got the connections with local media or Rolling Stone India or over the years. And so a part of it is to feed them the right materials. So I think it's critical for the artist to have, tight press kits, high-res photos, all the things that you need, and not be kind of, now wait for 2 days or whatever, and be open to doing kind of pop-up kind of stuff, right? So that's the other thing, like using the power of, TikTok or whatever might be your social media platform. But when you're like at the Taj Mahal, or you're in a crowded street market, or eating some samosa, so the idea would be to kind of, create that buzz and vibe, and you will have your local partners wanting to share that stuff. So you're going to get this kind of amplified boost and visibility and all of that stuff. But yeah, just go in prepared, or get that material out ahead of time, because a bunch of these folks would be able to get you on radio, for example, in India. It's not been easy, but that's also been something we've worked on over time, is to kind of break into these commercial channels, to have this 30-minute hour in studio with some live performance interview kind of promo for the show. But that's great, visibility and stuff going out to possibly, as Umair pointed out, 1,000x audience. So I think so some of those factors are what matter. But then unless you're a big artist, it really isn't. There's no point in taking out posters and getting them flyered around or something like that. And even then, that's the local sponsor's job.
And to get into even a few more details, and this is include some of the questions that are in the chat here. When you are you expected to bring gear with you? Do places usually have like a PA system or backline? And if they don't, and you play with them, like are there places to rent PA systems, rent any sort of backline that you need? And then I also these are two different questions, but I want to ask them in the same one because they're kind of connected in terms of how you get around. So is it possible to visit these regions as a performer and not speak the regional language or dialect? And how do you recommend somebody move through that space if they don't speak speak the language?
In India, it's not an issue in the sense of, again, multiple fronts. Often you will have a buffer in the sense of you'll have your minders or whatever. But in our case, small organization, there'll be someone who'll be taking care of you, showing you the ropes and everything. English is commonly spoken, and in these circles, that would be the default language of communication. And some of the Canadians would also be surprised in places like Pondicherry in the south. There'll be French. You could actually have conversation in French. But so yeah, I think language is not a barrier in South Asia per se, even in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. The logistics issue does arise with things like backline and PA. Again, PA is often going to be provided at the venue or wherever you're performing. The challenge arises with specific backline stuff, and we've often had to scramble with, specific amps will not be available, right? So if you want your specific sound, bring it with you. It's not going to be available there. But then there's also some stuff which you think, well, that's like basic equipment. You would not get it. Like I play vinyl. I play turntables. Good luck trying to find a Technics 1200 turntable, which is kind of, standard gear anywhere, but almost impossible to find it in a city like Delhi. So none of the sound vendors will have it. So you have to then go into private networks, borrow someone's and stuff like that. That's not advisable. So yeah.
Same thing, like there is no backline support. You have to carry all your backline with you, amps, etc. Another key thing to note is that the electricity, Canada is on 110 volts and Pakistan is on 220, so is India.
Same.
Carry your travel plugs, carry your step down, step up transformers with you. They will be PA. There you go. We all have
That's
those.
the Indian plug.
Yeah. So you have to, if you're going to Pakistan, you have to take all your backline, down to the dot. You have to plan for everything. And remember the electricity rule. PAs are there. Sound quality and production tech quality is terrible. If you have the option, take your own sound person.
Okay.
Or be very patient and explain what you need, because they will not get it. Also, it's a very basic PA. So if you have special instrument mics, take everything with you, because they will not have it most likely. And it's part of the plan. This is a crucial part of your planning, that you take all your gear with you. And on top of it, there will be power outages. So if you have an instrument that is sensitive or it might break down, then you also have to invest in or rent what you call a UPS. I don't know if it's a common thing here, but uninterrupted power supply that will bridge your thing before a generator kicks in. So you'll have to travel for all those things.
Yeah, we're getting to tech stuff, but this 110 to 220 also plays havoc with musical equipment. Creates all sorts of strange hums and sound issues and stuff. So, but often a lot of the modern gear has switchable stuff. So, use the device 110 to 220 switch to switch. So that's like just a practical thing which we've like dealt with. We have in India, backline is For some stuff is not as bad in sense of, yes, standard some amps and stuff like that, with drum kits, things like that will get organized. But it's amazing sometimes we the stuff we get asked, like I think once we got asked for some specific size congas, like it was a very it's this, you're coming to India, we don't have congas here, and it's not a traditional instrument in that sense, but of course we sourced it from some space, but or a particular keyboard or things like that, like we've been asked that more than once, and no, they're not just available. And sometimes artists get upset about that. So that's something that's just folks need to understand that, it's not, it's not a, what do you mean? You can't have a amp.
It's both of you had mentioned that there's, sometimes they'll make arrangements for folks to drive you places or to kind of be a liaison. Does the role of tour manager exist there, or would it, is that okay? So, and then if something like, so if not, then would you maybe have a liaison that would go with you or drive you around during your time there, or would you recommend people rent
In
a car?
Pakistan, I nod. Yeah, you will have a posse of people looking after you. You will most likely have a chauffeur-driven car and like someone with you 24/7. So logistics that way, you will have access to as much transportation as you need, which you upfront inform your embassy again. And that kind of connects with the language question. Like, we were a British colony, so everyone speaks English, but there will be someone that will interpret to the vendors on the streets for you, etc. So it's less of a concern, that there will be always someone with you, at least one person who will be taking care of all the logistics and all the communications that you might need.
Yeah. No, tour management is not an issue, but again, depends on the nature of the artists in the sense of, how, because there will be more engagement required. Things aren't like, oh, we spoke about this and this happened. So be prepared to have super flexible schedules, because things don't happen according to plan ever. So there's whether it's traffic or the power going out or person not showing up for the meeting, or the sound didn't show up in time for sound check, therefore sound check is delayed, therefore lunch got delayed, or therefore you had lunch now, but the sound check times got switched. But so there's all this chaos that's the nature of the game. And so kind of, working within that, and I've seen some bands actually have their tour manager there to manage this chaos for them. So it's not about driving from one place to the other. It's more about being the liaison with the liaison, or or with the liaison with your accommodation, or kind of figuring out the food transaction, because things like that, because things are a little bit more with masala, so to speak.
You need a liaison for the liaison. I think that's a very good term. Like, someone has to play that role on your behalf, either be it someone in the band or an external person. Yes.
Hey, well, we're coming up to the hour. Can I get some like last tips or bits of advice or final thoughts before we head off? Or if anybody has any questions that's listening in right now that you want to get in, we have about 5 minutes left.
I think as questions are coming in, I'll just come in. You really have to ask your question, why are you going to Pakistan? It is, it's a commitment on your behalf, right? It's a country that is considered dangerous by some, although it's not. And obviously, when you're going through the right channels, they will make sure that your safety is part of the plan. But when you're going to Pakistan for the first time, don't do it alone if you're not familiar with the country already. The downside of that will be that you will find a schedule that someone else has made for you. So if you want to have your own thing that that can be frustrating. So like plan for that, and again ask yourself, why are you going to Pakistan? And if you're going to connect to new community of artists and discover new music, lay that out up front, because once you land there, people will have their own agenda. The embassy wants to put you there to talk politics, like to represent Canada's image, for instance. And the presenter wants to impress their audiences. So make sure that you've asked this question and then you clearly communicate that throughout the process, and you get what you wanted as well. So if you really wanted to jam with local artists or a certain particular form of style of music, you make sure it's been in the plans before you come there. Otherwise, it can be frustrating. And
Right.
everything else that we've shared, like it's going to be an adventure and once in a lifetime experience, especially to be in Pakistan as an artist and performing. So kudos to you to even consider that, and I guarantee you'll have a great time.
I concur. I think part of it is just the experience. You are going for this experience. It's not a monetary project. It's and the engagement, and of course, if you have specific projects, like you want to engage with a certain style of music, and a lot of artists come to India seeking that. And if it's communicated in advance, so that facilitation can happen. So, and I think part of it is like, don't be shy. I think Canada is one of the lucky countries where you guys have amazing amount of state support for the arts, compared to a lot of spaces. So I think utilizing that to kind of creating new pathways, to find new opportunities, or create new experiences, because and some of these lead to places. I remember Jaffar, we brought him to India first in 2011. And since then, he's toured India 3 times. Madhu Siddiqui Diabate, we brought to India in 2011. He's made 5 tours of India. Dada Jobarte has now come to India 3 times. So I think that's the idea, where we are creating platforms. And to Umair's point, you are building your brand with a new audience, and if they start liking you, that's creating new opportunities, and I think that's big.
I think that's a good point as well. Like it has to be a multi-year affair. You don't need to be a big name. You will become a big name the day you land there. So take advantage of that.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Ankur, and thanks, Umair. We got some great feedback in the chat as well. Lots of folks saying thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. And again, we'll send out an email to everyone with the links to all this incredible information. And thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.